Hello everyone, my name is Thomas and welcome to a new show I like to call Case Studies. This is where I'll be talking about pretty much everything under the sun in media, from TV to movies to video games. On today's episode, I'll be talking about the infamous character Dutch van der Linde from the Red Dead Redemption series of games, performing an overview of his character and determining whether or not he's good or bad. And I think my conviction just might surprise you. Of course, I will have to be talking about the in-depth plot of both games, so if you haven't played them, there will be spoilers ahead. In 1899, the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2 takes place. In the intro cutscene of the game, we can see Dutch comforting his gang after some unknown tragedy in Blackwater. Before the player can even begin to take control of Arthur Morgan, the glorious leader gives his speech to the gang.
Now we've had, a bad couple of days, but we lost some folks. If I could throw myself in the ground in their stead, I'd do it. Gladly. We're safe now. Stay strong. Stay with me.
Even in the first few minutes of the game, Dutch makes it very apparent of two things. He is in charge, and loyalty is his number one currency. This is a running theme throughout the rest of the game, loyalty being one of the major plot points, especially towards the end. And I think it's pretty telling how thematically early he tells the importance of loyalty. Rockstar made a very important decision when it came to which character became the protagonist. Arthur Morgan was an orphaned son who was raised by Dutch in the mid to late 1800s. Dutch brought him into a world of outlaws, misfits, and criminals who were just trying to make their way in the world without making an honest living. This also occurs with John Marston, who was the protagonist of the first Red Dead Redemption game. This is incredibly important because going with the theme of loyalty, these two have the most to be loyal for. They owe the entirety of their childhood and who they are now to Dutch van der Linde. For the same reason, they also have the most to lose. This makes it increasingly difficult for the player to tell who is in the right. Arthur and John for questioning the loyalty to the now crazed Dutch van der Linde, or Dutch who acted as a father figure to both protagonists. The Dutch van der Linde that was originally introduced to the audience back in 2010 was a little bit different and a lot more vague than the Dutch van der Linde that we come to grow and love in Red Dead 2. This is because for most of the game, Dutch did not need a solid backstory, he only needed enough to kind of understand why John didn't like him anymore. Rockstar paid incredibly close attention to the detail they laid out in Red Dead Redemption 1 through dialogue when they were creating Red Dead 2. This created what I consider to be a masterpiece of continuity. This is why I can confidently say that Dutch van der Linde's character was always a bad man, at least in the eyes of his creator. It is up to the player to decide Dutch's fate whether or not he is worthy. In the first 3 chapters of the game, Dutch treats his gang as family members. However, in the first Red Dead Redemption, it is set up as though Dutch never cared about anyone he was with, he was only using them as pawns. But by the time the gang reaches the plot points in Saint Denis, you can kind of start to tell that he's losing faith in his group. One failed plan after another, you can start to see him crack. Luckily for those who are still fool enough to be loyal, Arthur points him in the right direction by telling them that
when the time comes, you gotta run and don't look back.
At some point during these same events, he begins coalescing with Micah Bell and completely abandons his ideology of loyalty, believing that every man should be for himself even though they're at their darkest hour. In the final few missions of the game, Dutch begins betraying everyone he holds near and dear. The first time a player witnesses a betrayal is when Dutch leaves Arthur for dead in the tar factory.
We need to go.
You ran away.
Oh, I did no such thing. Don't be a fool.
The next instance is when John gets shot on the train and then is promptly left behind.
John! Where's John?
I tried.
You left me. You left me to die.
Later on, leaving both Arthur and Micah on top of the mountain to die by the Pinkertons.
Let's go. We can make it. Come on, Dutch! Come on!
By the time the events of the first game roll around, he's even decided to betray everyone who was originally with him, such as Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, and many others. Ultimately, he was just a selfish man trying to look out for number one, while simultaneously dragging everyone else into the mud. By the time John catches up with Dutch in the first game, it becomes apparent that he has completely lost his mind since the events of the second game. Upon initially reuniting with John, he takes a woman hostage, and before parting, he shoots her in the head, something that he never would have committed to while the gang was still in full. After this and several other instances of Dutch's unwarranted violence, it becomes apparent that there is nothing left of the charismatic man that we all knew. Ultimately, that was Dutch van der Linde's superpower, charisma. Had Dutch not been able to convince Hosea that they should begin working together, there would never have been such thing as the van der Linde gang, and thus none of the events would ever have taken place. For his entire life, he just charmed and swindled anyone that ever got in his way, and because of this, he never learned that it was wrong. He had always assumed that the way he did things were the correct way, and that the government was simply incorrect. However, this was also his largest failure, as his ivory tower was built on a foundation of lies and unfulfilled promises. Everyone he worked with eventually was sick of him, everyone he encountered eventually got tired, and he knew that one day it would just be him. By the end of Red Dead 1, he finally acknowledges the statement at the open of the prequel. By 1899, the age of outlaws and gunslingers was at an end. Dutch van der Linde was forged by the outlaws of the Wild West, but when the West was no longer wild, he no longer fit in. At the end of Red Dead Redemption, Dutch utters his final words.
Our time has passed, John.
Before jumping backwards off a cliff, because if any one man was going to kill him, it was going to be himself. Dutch van der Linde was never a good man, at least not by society's standards. But for the gang, he was a father and a powerful leader able to persuade the gang everything would be just fine. He was a guardian protecting what was his, but when the world started closing in around him, he bailed on the only people that could save him. Dutch van der Linde always looked for the quickest way out and the easiest solution to a problem. Dutch van der Linde was a coward. Thank you so much for checking out my new series, Case Studies. In this, I'll be looking more in depth at character analysis, movie plot details, and hey, if I feel like looking into something else, maybe I'll do that later on. If you liked the video, of course, let me know about it. I'd love to make more of these, and I've got at least 3 more written. I'd also like to give a shout out to Karsten Rehnquist. It's another channel on YouTube. It's kind of where I got the idea for this style of video. I've liked writing for a really long time, and I'm glad that I'm finally able to culminate that into some form of video. So like I said, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.